The Chinese government has long engaged in policies aimed at influencing and intervening in the affairs of its neighboring countries, leading to visible dissatisfaction from nations such as North Korea, Vietnam, and Mongolia. In North Korea, Kim Jong-un is evidently trying to lessen his country's heavy diplomatic reliance on China. His recent series of missile tests not only to showcase military strength, but also likely to send a message to the United States. In Vietnam, pro-communist factions are under unprecedented pressure, with 2 of the 4 key leaders being dismissed, which has negatively affected relations between Hanoi and Beijing. Meanwhile, in Mongolia, the pro-communist president and the pro-Western prime minister are in conflict, with the prime minister using Western support to try to diminish the president's influence. After laying low during the course of the COVID-19 pandemic, Kim Jong-un accelerated missile tests in 2022 and 2023 and even launched North Korea's first spy satellite in November 2023. Since April 2nd this year, almost weekly missile launches have been conducted into neighboring waters, including medium-range hypersonic missiles, short-range ballistic missiles, and submarine-launched ballistic missiles. Analysts point out that Kim Jong-un's missile and satellite programs are backed by China and Russia, which empowers him to pose a threat to Western nations. Kim Jong-un is keen to bolster his military capabilities while also gathering leverage for negotiations with the United States. Additionally, in January this year, North Korea abolished its reunification department and destroyed the reunification arc, a symbol for its reconciliation efforts with South Korea, officially terminating its reunification agenda. This action signals North Korea's desire to control the peninsula's reunification process on its own terms, a strategy that could potentially destabilize the region if not tacitly approved by the United States. On April the 3rd, a report by Reuters revealed that the Chinese government had obtained 6 embryos belonging to Kim Jong-un, including 2 male embryos. Upon hearing this, Kim Jong-un was extremely angered. During his visit to North Korea on April the 13th, Zhao Leji, a senior Chinese official, tried to pacify him with gifts while warning him not to act rashly in negotiations with the United States, citing China's extensive global intelligence network. Facing pressure from China, Kim Jong-un realized he was not yet powerful enough and had to temporarily comply, continuing missile launches to vent his frustration. There have always been numerous conflicts between China and North Korea. According to Shen Zhihua in his book, The Last Celestial Empire, Mao Zedong, Kim Il-sung, and Sino-North Korean Relations, between 1958 and 1964, Mao Zedong repeatedly told Kim Il-sung that China's northeast could serve as North Korea's rear base, and even once offered to let Kim Il-sung manage the entire northeast. However, these promises were never fulfilled. In December 1958, Mao told the visiting Kim Il-sung that, "I said at the start of the U.S. invasion of Korea that the Northeast is your rear base. It's all yours. You can move offices, schools, and Air Force there whenever you want." At the end of May 1963, Mao told Kim Il-sung during the meeting in Wuhan that the entire Northeast is North Korea's major rear base, and that in the event of war, it would be under Kim Il-sung's unified command. At that time, Mao was considering using the Northeast as a strategic buffer in case of conflict with the Soviet Union, proposing that Kim Il-sung manage it as a buffer between the Soviet Union and China. In September 1964, Kim Il-sung began a secret visit to the Northeast. Former leader Deng Xiaoping personally went to Shenyang to greet him, telling Kim, "If anything happens, this place will be under your control." After he left, Kim Il-sung, accompanied by local officials, spent several weeks touring the Northeast. According to Chen Zhihua, Kim Il-sung at the time truly believed that the Northeast would soon be a part of North Korea. However, after Zhou Enlai and Mao Zedong died in 1976, subsequent Chinese leaders never dealt with North Korea as Mao had. Following the political turmoil in 1989, Kim Il-sung proposed to China's new leadership that the Northeast should serve as North Korea's major rear base, but China did not engage in the conversation or even consider it. When Kim Jong-il came into power in 1994, he requested to inspect the Northeast, but the Chinese authorities agreed only to a visit, leading to disagreements between the two sides. China refused to discuss the matter on the grounds that it involved sovereignty, which Kim Jong-il was not happy with. In 2011, through his uncle Jang Song-taek, Kim Jong-un expressed his desire to inspect the Northeast, but was also rebuffed. China even hinted that if Kim Jong-un is not up to the task, it would be better to let his brother Kim Jong-nam return to the country to take charge. This statement was intercepted by North Korean spies within the Chinese Communist Party. Kim Jong-un concluded that Jang Song-taek was conspiring with China to usurp power. Shortly after returning to China, Jang Song-taek was executed. Aside from these historical issues, a fundamental strategic disagreement exists between China and North Korea. North Korea seeks to unify the Korean peninsula, while China wishes to maintain the status quo. As a result, Kim Jong-un has been trying to free himself from Chinese control. In 2013, when NBA star Dennis Rodman visited North Korea, Kim Jong-un did indeed establish contact with the United States through Rodman, which was discovered by Xi Jinping. The communication between North Korea and the United States was thus completely severed. On June 2018, Kim Jong-un and then U.S. President Donald Trump held a historic first meeting in Singapore, reaching a consensus on denuclearization of the Korean peninsula and establishing a new type of U.S.-North Korea relationship. In April and September of the same year, Kim Jong-un held two meetings with South Korean President Moon Jae-in. They signed the Panmunjom Declaration and the September Pyongyang Joint Declaration, both aimed at improving bilateral relations and promoting peace on the peninsula. In 2019, the leaders of North Korea and the United States met again at Panmunjom, with Donald Trump becoming the first sitting U.S. president to set foot on North Korean soil. These interactions indicate North Korea's intention to break the diplomatic deadlock and normalize relations. At the same time, North Korea has repeatedly signaled a willingness to reform and open up, adopting a new strategic line focused on economic development. The establishment of multiple economic zones to encourage foreign investment reflects its desire to reduce foreign dependencies and pursue independent development. The establishment of multiple economic zones to encourage foreign investment reflects its desire to reduce foreign dependencies and pursue independent development. However, significant differences remain between North Korea and the U.S. regarding the timetable for denuclearization and the lifting of sanctions against North Korea. These issues, compounded by the COVID-19 pandemic beginning in 2020 and the change in the U.S. presidency with Trump's departure, have stalled dialogue between the two countries. After taking office in 2021, the Biden administration reiterated its commitment to a diplomatic resolution to North Korea's nuclear issues, but emphasized conditional talks, raising concerns from the North Korean side. Subsequently, North Korea resumed missile testing, leading to heightened tensions on the peninsula. Amid escalating strategic competition between China and the U.S., North Korea is attempting to leverage the rivalry between these major powers to maximize its own benefits. This has increased China's concerns and forced it to think about how to maintain control over North Korea. Coincidentally, since November 2022, Kim Jong-un has been making frequent public appearances with his daughter, Kim Joo-ae. Some suggest this is to prepare Kim Joo-ae for succession. Does this imply that Kim Jong-un is aware of his limited time left? Consequently, many observers speculate that among those who might wish harm upon Kim Jong-un, the Chinese Communist Party is likely included. Kim Jong-un's half-brother Kim Jong-nam was assassinated in Malaysia in 2017. Kim Jong-un's undoubtedly aware of who was behind it and realizes he could face a similar fate. Under these circumstances, it is natural for Kim Jong-un to prepare his daughter for succession, thus keeping Kim Joo-ae close is understandable. However, a surprising piece of intelligence was revealed by Reuters. It suggests that Kim Jong-un keeps his daughter close so that his subordinates can remember exactly what Kim Jo-ae looks like in case there is an attempt to replace her. According to Reuters, Kim Jo-ae has an older twin sister who has been detained in China under the pretext of needing medical care and remains in Beijing to this day. The twin sister does indeed look like Kim Jo-ae, though not identical, so now Kim Jo-ae is being shown publicly so that Kim Jong-un's subordinates can identify which one is the daughter who grew up in North Korea. Reuters also disclosed that the Chinese Communist Party is plotting to maintain control over North Korea by eliminating Kim Jong-un if he becomes disobedient. And if Kim Jo-ae, who might succeed him, does not comply, they plan to replace her with her sister, who is in China's custody. Kim Jo-ae was born on February 19, 2013, to North Korea's First Lady, Lee So-ju. Intelligence from Reuters indicates that Lee So-ju underwent an embryo transplant surgery in a hospital in Shenyang, China, and gave birth to twin girls in February 2013 in Shenyang. Kim Jo-ae is the younger twin. Her older sister is the one who had a heart defect with an unclosed oval foramen and was placed in an incubator after birth. Later, the Chinese government took the child to Beijing for better treatment at the Ba-yi Children's Hospital Neonatology Department. Therefore, Kim Jong-un is deeply concerned about the possibility of his daughter, Kim Jo-ae, being replaced, and has thus decided to make her presence public, taking her everywhere he goes. Analysts believe that the greatest potential upheaval in Northeast Asia could be in North Korea. If Kim Jong-un turns against them, China could lose North Korea as a buffer state and face immense pressure from the alliance of the United States, South Korea, and Japan. Meanwhile, the political landscape in Vietnam has undergone dramatic changes recently, with a pro-communist president and chairman of the National Assembly stepping down within a month. Vietnamese politics operate under a four-pillar system comprising of the General Secretary of the Communist Party, the President, the Prime Minister, and the Chairman of the National Assembly, each overseeing a different area. The factions are split between the pro-communist North and the pro-American South. Following the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, the pro-communist General Secretary Nguyen Phu Trọng took a strong anti-corruption stance. He displaced the southern faction and consolidated pro-communist elements within all four key positions. However, less than 4 years later, two of the four pillars crafted by Nguyen Phu Trọng have fallen. On April 26, at the 13th Central Committee meeting of the Vietnamese Communist Party, it was agreed that Vương Đình Huệ would resign from his roles as a member of the Political Bureau of the Communist Party of Vietnamese Central Committee and as chairman of the Vietnamese National Assembly. Prior to this, on March 20, the pro-communist president Nguyen Xuân Phúc had already been forced to resign. At 80 years old, Nguyen Phu Trọng capacity to assemble another quartet of pro-China political leaders is questionable. Evidently, the pro-American faction is gaining influence, and Hanoi is progressively distancing itself from Beijing. Entering 2024, anti-government militias in Myanmar on China's southwestern border have strongly pushed back the military government, seizing multiple trade and transport routes important for the China-Myanmar economic corridor. These militias are supported by the United States and other Western powers, and as the situation in Myanmar deteriorates, China's influence there is increasingly undermined. In the north, China has been using economic aid and investments in an attempt to turn Mongolia into a satellite state of Beijing. However, recent rises in pro-American sentiment within Mongolia have severely impacted China's plans. The power struggle between the President Khurelsukh Okna and Prime Minister Owen Ordine Lufsanamsrai represents the conflict between Mongolia's pro-communist and pro-American factions. In June, Mongolia will conduct its first parliamentary election since its constitutional reform, electing an additional 76 members, which will affect the power balance between the president and the prime minister. Prime Minister Owen Ordine seeks to expand his influence through these elections to counterbalance the president's powers. Meanwhile, President Khurelsukh leverages presidential administrative resources to support pro-communist candidates. In recent years, there has been a growing call within Mongolia to distance itself from China and strengthen ties with the U.S. The pro-American faction is tapping into nationalist feelings to promote anti-communist sentiment. In response to the deteriorating situation, China has implemented a high-profile intervention strategy, which has seen limited success. At the end of April, the Chinese Ministry of Defense announced a joint military exercise in Mongolia scheduled for May, involving battalion-sized troop deployments and wheeled equipment aimed at deterring anti-communist forces. However, this show of military strength has only intensified nationalist sentiments in Mongolia. Chinese enterprises are frequently harassed by non-governmental organizations, and Chinese citizens in Mongolia often suffer thefts and attacks, indicating that hostility toward China has transitioned from isolated incidents to an organized movement. This suggests that Mongolian anti-communist forces are using nationalist sentiments to provoke an anti-communist wave, seeking to weaken China's influence in the country. Amidst this backdrop, Prime Minister Owen Erdene frequently signals alignment with the West, specifically the UK and the US, in opposition to communism. In March, Kurt Campbell, the US Deputy Secretary of State, responsible for East Asian and Pacific affairs, visited Mongolia and was personally greeted by Owen Erdene. In April, British Foreign Secretary David Cameron also visited Mongolia, receiving an exceptional reception from Owen Erdene, who even accompanied him on a horseback tour. As the United States continues to push its Indo-Pacific strategy, Western nations will undoubtedly increase their efforts to pull Mongolia into their orbit, attempting to use it as another piece to counter China. Undoubtedly, under the dual pressures of pro-American and nationalist forces, China's influence in Mongolia will continue to weaken. The discord between Kim Jong-Un and Xi Jinping, along with Vietnam's shift toward pro-American policies and the rise of pro-Western forces in Mongolia, indicate a significant reshaping of regional power dynamics. This shift is placing strategic pressure on the Chinese Communist Party. If these countries fully embrace pro-Western positions, they could diminish China's influence in East Asia and potentially lead to a broader reshaping of international alliances, particularly with strategic support from the United States and other Western nations. As for the Chinese Communist Party, this scenario might force accelerated internal political and economic reforms. If mishandled, these changes could lead to the disintegration of the CCP regime.